Sorry, my bad.
No, you're good.
Hello and welcome back to PA Chalk Up. Today we have Nicole. Hi Nicole, how we doing?
What's up? I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. If you just let us know who you are, what you do, and how you got to the position that you're in.
I'm Coach Nicole. I'm currently at Missouri State University. The teams I work with primarily are women's basketball and women's golf. Um, I guess kind of how I got into strength and conditioning is, I played college basketball. I graduated from Seton Hall. My athletic trainer, shout out to Catherine Lass, she kind of was the first person to tell me, you should look into strength and conditioning as a field that you should look into. You should consider going to Springfield College. It's a great program. So from there, I went to Springfield College. I also had the opportunity to meet with Coach Glenn Kane. He's over at Rutgers University right now. Um, and he was also another mentor of mine, kind of guiding me in what I should do. And he also was a Springfield alum, so he highly recommended Springfield as well. Um, so I was actually on the waiting list, so I thought I wasn't going to get in, and luckily I was able to get into Springfield College. I was there for 2 years. I was a graduate assistant my second year, and I had women's basketball, women's soccer, diving, gymnastics as like my primary sports that I was like the head strength coach for. But then I also interned for football, rugby, women's rugby, lacrosse as well. Basically, I've been around a lot of teams, a lot of sports, different sports. Um, Anyways, after my 2 years at Springfield College, which was an amazing experience. So if anyone is looking to get their master's degree, I highly recommend you go to Springfield College. I then had the opportunity to go to University of Connecticut, and I interned under Andrea Hoodie, who is again um, very well known in the field. She again guided me and taught me a lot. And then from there, I had a short stint over at Sacred Heart University where I had women's basketball, rugby, and volleyball. And then from there, found my way here at Missouri State.
As a strength coach, we deal a lot with Excel's spreadsheets and building out the best program that we can for our athletes. Although, when you have these large amount of spreadsheets and Excels and printables and packs that you need to hand out to your athletes, it can get a little bit overwhelming, especially with large amount of files. Mine's personally has crashed, deleted, and that to me is a big burden. That's why since starting my own business, I've went with TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr is an all-in-one programming software that has truly changed and leveled up the way I coach and the way I program for my athletes. With TeamBuildr, you can create customizable workouts, track your athletes' progress in real time, and even generate performance reports with just a few clicks. Athletes can also fill out their own workout data by using either the tablet or their smartphones in the weight room, which, most importantly, eliminates the paperwork that we all hate. This also gives your athletes accountability for their program and their progress as they are immersed within it. If you are interested in using TeamBuildr, head over to teambuildr.com and sign up using code PACHALKUP. That's PACHALKUP to start your 30-day free trial. I'm always fascinated with the Olympic sports side of colleges in the US and how a strength coach can be like in charge of multiple teams all at once. How is it sort of dealing with all those different teams and trying to program for different varieties of skills and movement patterns?
It was challenging. It was hard because I was also trying to get my master's degree. So um, not only was I coaching a bunch of teams or different teams, I also was going to school. So the good thing about that was I had a really good circle. We learned from each other in the office, outside of the office. We studied together. We discussed what our program looked like. So bouncing ideas off of each other. So to me, I think the biggest thing was just making sure that your support system is strong. Um, because again, like I say it all the time, like it takes a village. Like you can't get through this field alone. Um, so I guess to answer your question, like yeah, no, it wasn't easy, but because of the people that I was around, and my classmates, etc., like it just made everything seem seamlessly and very easy. Um, but yeah, very different. I mean, from gymnastics to basketball to then a field sport with soccer, to then like a diving sport in the pool. Very different. But at the end of the day, like the priority for me is just like making sure that they move well. And so, what does that look like, right? From the ground up for me. So, looking at
Mm.
the foot ankle complex, the hip, crucial, especially in like basketball or any really like sport that has to deal with change of direction. Um, so for me, it was making sure that I didn't care how much you put on the bar. For me, my most important thing and aspect is making sure that you move well. At Springfield College, we use the FMS, which is a functional movement screening test. So we tagged along with our athletic training staff, and we kind of put all our athletes through the FMS testing. Um, and so from there, we kind of had like a library of what their needs were, whether if it's, core stability, ankle mobility, or stability. Um, and then, yeah, from there, I mean, we had jump mats. So obviously, what's their
Power
signature
outputs,
when they jump.
power outputs, and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So looked at that. And then we also had access to velocity based training. So that was just another scheme and way to kind of how much should you load on the bar. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah. No, it does. I had Mike Boyle on previously, and he talked a lot about like when he started in the industry. Well, when he was at university, like learning and sort of getting through his first couple of years of being in this industry, he brainstormed. He had like this petri dish, as he explains it, with the biggest coaches that now are like the grandfathers of S&C, and how they all did exactly what you're just talking about, just like brainstorming ideas. Like, okay, I've got this athlete that's got this function, but he's lacking this. Like, what do you guys think? And like they just rattled off everything that he could or should be doing.
yeah.
How has that sort of progressed with you in this industry as you become like head coach and now like in the positions that you're in?
Yeah, there's still mentors that I reach out to and ask questions on certain things or topics or GPS data, etc. What are you looking at versus what I'm looking at with data? So yeah, I still refer to my mentors: Glenn Kane, Andrea Hoodie, Catherine Lass, Dr. MK, who's from Springfield College as well, and then obviously the strength coaches that are in my office. So, Marcus Brock, he's the men's basketball strength coach at Missouri State. Um, and then Mitch, he's our rehab coordinator at Missouri State. He's phenomenal. He's our AT as well. And then obviously the person I work hand in hand with is Megan, who's our AT for women's basketball. Um, so, and I can go on and on with a bunch of names
Hmm.
that I reach out to. Um, but again, it just goes back to like, even though you think you've figured it out and you think you know it all, like you don't, because then you're going to be hit with something else, whether it's a new injury that you've never even heard of before, or you didn't even know it could happen. Um, and so then you're having to go back to your work, and it's just this constant cycle, right? You're learning, you're unlearning, and then you're having to learn again.
Hmm.
Um, and
100%.
so, yeah.
I
So,
always say like the more I get through this industry, sometimes like the less I know. Because like
yeah.
you'll read something else and you're like, oh well,
Hmm.
what does that do to my programs now? Like how I'm just like, and like the same thing with this podcast. Like I'll speak to coach and they'll be like, "Oh, I use this, and this." And I was like, "Oh, but like, what is it? Like, why do you do that?" And they rattle it off, and I'm just like, "Maybe I should be doing that."
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we talk about it all the time. Like, there's no such thing as absolutes. Like, there isn't.
Mhm.
because it could work. One thing could work for you, Manny, but then the same exercise may not work for me or have any benefits for me. So, yeah, I just make sure that I'm constantly learning, reading, adapting, changing, and just being humble enough to understand that I don't have all the answers. You know.
It's that ego that's very prevalent in our industry that people sometimes get stuck in. I've finished my degree, I've got my CSES, I've got my
Yeah.
UKSES, whatever accreditation you want to rattle off. So I don't need to learn anymore. I'm done. And it's like, well, not really. Like you're doing your athletes a big ass disservice if you think that this is it. Like there's so much more that you can get into and new ways, new things coming up as well. Like you mentioned GPS data and what they're doing with it. Like when you get GPS data from a raw file, it's just numbers, like
Hmm.
thousands of numbers, and
Hmm.
you have to decipher what that means. Like what does that actually like? What am I looking at? He's
Hmm.
running 20 miles an hour. Cool, but like, is that like full speed chasing a ball? Is it like what is it actually? What does
Yeah.
it mean?
Yeah.
So having that ego really hinders your ability to see what's actually in front of you too.
That's a good question, and I think I'm gonna always refer back to like my support system because again, like I was really fortunate and blessed to be around great leaders, Glenn Kane, Andrew Hoodie, Catherine Ness, Dr. MK, and their leadership allowed me to fail, right?
Mm,
So because of the amount of times I was thrown in the fire and I failed over and over again, I was able to learn, you know. And I know that there's been a few coaches around, same experience timeline as me, and they were never able to go through the process of failing. They were
mm,
just told this is how I want it done, this is what it needs to look like, and that's it. And so they've never gone through the, I guess, that phase of failing, and then what do you do when you fail and get out of that situation. So again, I've been surrounded by great support system, and leaders that have allowed me to fail, that when I do anything now, I'm okay with doing certain
yeah,
things that are outside of the box, because if I fail, it's okay. Not only is it going to get me better, but it's also going to get my athletes better because I'm going to find certain answers that may not have been found previously. And that goes
100%.
back to, huge shout out to even my head coach, who I currently work with, Coach Cunningham at Missouri State. She's another one of those examples of like, she allows me to do things outside of my comfort zone, make sure that I'm doing things that, are going to make me quote unquote fail. Which she was one of the main reasons why I put that courtside conversation,
Mm,
Zoom symposium together. And again, it's just, I guess I get like goosebumps because again, I've just been fortunate enough to be around a great. I have had great leaders who have allowed me to help me to grow, expand my knowledge, fail, learn, and all the works.
mhm. A great mentor is not someone that is done with you as soon as you're finished their program. Like a great mentor will be phoning you or like messaging you at whatever hour that they can and being like, "Hey, let's jump on a call. Let's push you to being comfortable." Like my biggest mentor is Coach Ron McKeefery,
Okay.
and like
Yeah.
he's
Ron
he's
McKeefer.
done yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
So
Yeah.
he's done a fair bit in this industry. He's now Alabama State. Like he's all right. He's done all right. But like
Yeah, he's a great
he
coach.
like he phoned me a month ago and he was just like, "Hey man, I've got an idea for you." So I was like, "Okay." And like this is something that we had spoke earlier about, but he kind of like gave me more pieces to the puzzle during this phone call, and I'm just like, "Coach, this is very uncomfortable. Like I'm not. This isn't like what I I'm comfortable with." And he was like, "Yeah, well, I think you'll do it. So here's the idea. Go take it, run with it, do whatever you
Hmm.
want. Just get it done." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So
Yep.
like now I'm having to work on this thing, which if it works out, and I'll tell you afterwards, um, like it'll be really good for the industry as well. So it's like he sees like these little pockets, and that's what a mentor does. Is like he takes you as the coach and human that you are, and tries to adapt and think of ideas that you can really excel at, like the court side event that you put on. which we'll get into as well. Like, no strength coach is in the position that they can do another avenue, or like comfortable enough to put on these events, because like we don't put on events, like we
Mhm.
coach.
Yeah.
Like, events is just like, we'll
Yeah.
attend events, we'll speak at events, but putting it and organizing and doing everything else for it, that's a little bit not what our job is.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
So for like, for your mentor still be pushing you on, like that's what a mentor should be doing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, I've just been lucky to been able to be around those leaders, um, who are great mentors. And not only that, too, like they've also gone through and have seen a lot as well. So because of that, they've kind of, told me, hey, this is what you should or should not do, or, yeah.
In terms of the courtside event that you had on, how did that sort of come about, and what essentially was for? Because I love the the what the proceeds went towards as well.
Mhm. Yeah, so we're currently in the stages of um, building a brand new weight room. Okay, so every other Olympic sport will be training in this new weight room that's being built. And then the one that we're currently training in, it's going to be only men's and women's basketball's weight room. But um, with that change, we technically won't have a strength and conditioning budget, so we're having to put together we're going to have to combine men's basketball's budget and women's basketball's budget together, so that we can make changes in the weight room. But we don't have that yet. So that's why we created the courtside conversations as a means to, be able to fundraise, um, kind of get, raise this money and seeing, okay, what's our vision for this space, what do we want it to look like in the next 3 to 5 years. Um, and so for me, it was a great way to, like, we're now putting action into, like, we want things to change in this space, so now we need the help and support to make it happen. So it's kind of like a conversation starter, with hopefully our athletic director, and everything. So that's still in the works, but we raised a good amount of money, and we're super grateful for everyone who participated, and helped us with that fundraiser. We are looking to hopefully doing that maybe twice a year at least, because again, like, we don't technically have a budget for that room and space. But yeah, honestly, it all started off with Coach Cunningham telling me and challenging me, like, hey, you should be speaking at the symposiums that you are going to, and you should be doing this and X, Y, and Z that you are, um, including yourself in. And I'm just kind of like, I was like laughing and jokingly saying, like, that's something I don't do. I'm a coach first, right? Um, I know I'm loud and energetic and all that, but for me, speaking in front of a bunch of people is totally different than coaching in the weight room. That's just my opinion. Maybe some people are like, no, it's the same thing, but to me, it's very different. So, anyways, she was just kind of challenging me, and I didn't. I think that's the other thing too, is like making sure that, like, if someone is challenging you and you know that they mean well,
Mm.
making sure that you're not taking it defensively, um, which that's a whole other topic. But I didn't take it, defensively or anything, and so I ran with it, took her advice, and was able to put together courtside conversations, and I thought it was a success. Obviously, there's a lot of things I would have done differently, but then that's kind of how, we just recently
The
discussed
learning
about
process.
failing. Yeah, going through the process, and hopefully the next one that we put together is a lot better. We just
Yeah.
keep getting
No,
1% better.
100%. And like, I think what you touched on is kind of ties into this as well. Is like, if your mentor's saying something, it's kind of like the way that you receive it is the way that can can either be a positive or a negative thing.
Hmm.
If you know that they mean well and they like really care for you and your development, but what they're saying is a little bit like harsher, we'll say, it's very easy to be like, no, like that's not me, fuck you. But if you take it as like constructive criticism and you're like, okay, like they've said this, I personally didn't like it, but let me take what they said, remove myself from it, and analyze what they're saying. Like,
Yep.
and I always bring this up, like on my exit interview with Coach Mac at the end of my internship, like he has these interviews where he says like, this is where I think you'll have success in the industry. This is where I think you'll do well, and then like he'll give you some work ons and he'll ask about the program itself. Like on my things that I need to get better, he said I need to get a louder voice, I need to become a bigger person. Like for me, I was like, "But I'm this size, like I can't physically change it, like how can I change that?" And it wasn't until like I asked a little bit more on it, and he was like you're a great coach, but your voice doesn't match sometimes your actions. So like you need to be more present, more um just become more aware on how people are receiving and like match their energy too. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But like for someone to just say you need to be get a bigger voice, okay, like how, like what does that mean?
Yeah.
So like, and then that ties into the whole building events and becoming like that 1% better. Is like
Mhm.
because you see and you analyze this way, you could fail and just be like, okay, I failed miserably, but this is what I took from it.
Yeah.
And it's like it's that but that can put you up for success as well. So like hearing what you've just said and mentioning the defensiveness of it, I was like, yeah, that's both the same thing.
Yeah. There's a book. It's called Four Agreements. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's great on basically discussing on how you should um, not take things so defensively and things like that. But anyways, I can't remember who wrote it, but it's called Four Agreements, and it's great. It's phenomenal. Um, but yeah,
You also had great speakers on there too.
yes, I was lucky they said yes.
Is it this one?
Yes. Yep, that's the book. Who wrote it? Who was it by?
Uh,
I can't remember it because I believe he has a few other ones, but
Dan Miguel Ruiz.
okay.
I had, so the reason that we connected was because of Bree Brown.
Okay,
She
yeah.
mentioned that she was doing this event, and I
Yeah.
then done my research on the event. I was like, oh, sick, Nicole. So
Yeah.
then I reached out to you immediately. Like this is another aspect I love about this industry. Is like if you've got coaches who really take time to speak to each other and like really talk shop, you can become exposed to so many other coaches, and you're just like connected with everything from there on as well.
Yeah. Especially too just learning how um and understanding how everyone does it so differently. So it's just another example as to like there's no like right way of doing it. It's just making sure that you do have your why
Mm.
behind why you're doing what you're doing. Because again, every athlete is going to respond differently to different stimulus and stuff. Um, but yeah, it definitely, if you're able to speak to different strength coaches, you're being exposed to different training schemes and methods and things like that. And it's also challenging your thought process on how you train athletes. So I think that's why it was another great um, Zoom symposium, because you were being challenged in a way with how other strength coaches go about training their athletes.
Yeah. What were some of the mistakes that you made during that symposium that you are going to try and not make next time round?
Yeah. So I have like I literally have it right here. I have like 2 pages worth of notes from that.
Nice.
But to keep it short, um, Q&A could have been better. You know, just I like more organic
Mm.
and more of a dialogue. So Q&A could have been different and done better. It could have been shorter because it was a long day. Um, so try to maybe keep it to like 3 to 4 speakers at most. We're not going from 8 a.m. to, I think it ended up at like till 2 p.m. And so it was long and lengthy. Um, so keeping it short, and then even even the way I guess I promoted the event could have been better. So
I would disagree because I saw it everywhere
really
after. Yeah.
Yeah, so I sent out a survey, and I've got some feedback, which is great. Again, like I'm glad that they responded and I got feedback because again, that's only going to allow me to make some changes and do things better. Um, but yeah, there were some comments that said they would have had like the day's schedule,
Mm,
seen a little bit more often, um, which that's also difficult too, which I realized because there were still things in the works of like who to
mm,
speak when, who was able to speak at certain times. So there's a lot of other logistics that go into it that I didn't realize until I obviously putting it together.
mm,
Um, but again, it was fun. Um, I had fun being able to kind of tap into my creative side when I was doing the designs and everything,
mm.
like on Canva and stuff. So
What
that
was
was
your
fun.
favorite parts of it and your biggest takeaways from it?
From the symposium.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest one, obviously, they were all phenomenal. Like, it was all great. But I think what spoke to me the most was, and I think it's because of where I'm at right now, currently, and what I'm dealing with right now at Missouri State, is when Glenn came, spoke, and his topic was on creating value.
Mm,
Um, and just the way that he broke that down, and I just that was like the number one for me because again of where I'm at currently and what I'm trying to I guess accomplish here at Missouri State. So that one for me was great. I don't want to
yeah.
spill too much because then you should have joined or bought the recording.
Yeah. There's a great book, and I've mentioned this book a couple times on this podcast. It's Show Your Work, and
Mhm.
the big message that I've taken from that is like, so what? Like you're putting all this content out, but like, so what? Like, what is the reason behind you putting out that content? Like, what does it actually? Does it change anything? Does it elicit any sort of response from the viewerships? Actually, it's right here.
I'm gonna have to write this one down. I love reading books, so show your work. Cool.
Um, and I've mentioned it a lot because of like it's like a couple hour read, like it's not long, and
I
it
like
just
that.
breaks. Yeah, like I'm dyslexic as shit, so like for me, books have to be like
I think I
I
low
have
key
to
have
be engaged.
ADD, so I have to reread the line like 5 times. But yeah, I got
I'm really calling myself out here, but like I have to
you.
have these types of books,
Yep.
and you'll see like at the top there's like a numbers, like a ruler. Like I
Yep.
have to like work my way down with it. So
That's
that's on me calling myself out.
that's all right. I did too, so we're good.
um, so like from the speakers, is there anything that you've sort of started wanting to implement? You've mentioned the like your your reasoning as to why. Like, what's the biggest why that you're currently working on?
Yeah. Again, I guess the biggest why is just making sure that I guess whenever I do anything, I'm always gonna make sure that it's 100% effort. I'm not gonna half-ass things.
Mm,
I'm gonna put my time into it. I think it comes from a place like I care a lot. I care about my team, the athletes that I work with. I care about my staff and how I am representing them. I care about how I represent my past mentors and current mentors. Um, so it's understanding that everything that I do, I'm always representing something, whether it's my mentors, my family, my team, the program, Missouri State University, and because of that, I'm a part of something a lot bigger than just myself. So my why is always going to go back to, okay, I'm doing this because it's going to benefit my athletes, or I'm making this choice because I need to spend time with my family, or I'm making
mm,
this choice because if I don't take care of myself first or get my, quote unquote 8 hours of sleep, then how am I going to be able to fill my athlete's cup? So I think the biggest thing is like making sure that, I'm filling my cup first so then I can fill other people's cups around me because we are in a serving, profession. Like we're
mm.
serving day in and day out and it doesn't matter what time it is.
Yeah,
um,
100%. I
so
was speaking to a coach the other day, and they were like, and it's the simplest way I've ever heard it being put, but you have to give a fuck. Like you have to give a
Yeah,
fuck about your athletes. You
yeah.
have to give a
If not,
fuck about their
then
health.
don't do what you're doing. Yeah, do
100%.
something else. But yeah. So I guess that's kind of like where my why starts off and what the root of it is. Um, and then obviously like making sure that, I'm always gonna leave the place better than how I found it.
Mm.
So I guess that's why, like, doing that fundraiser, I want to make sure that this place is better than how I came into it. Um, I mean, our racks are completely broken. You have to be careful when you're benching on the bench because the screws are loose and like we've lost screws and we haven't replaced them, and there's a bunch of things that I can go into, but um, just making sure that that space that I came into is going to be better whenever I do leave or if I do ever leave.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah,
I really like the concept because it's like you're like you've just sort of mentioned, but like you're putting more into the program than it currently has. So like you're taking time out of your day that you personally aren't getting paid for. Like it's not money that's going straight to you, but you're investing your time and sort of energy into something that's going to make the the space feel better for their athletes too. And I think like
yeah,
you get great buy-in for that as well. Like
mhm.
when your athletes see that you care like so much that you're actually willing to put on these great events for them to have better stuff, and then they'll get to use it and they're like, yeah, like Coach
And
Nicole fucking
it's like
did this.
having a sense of pride. Like
Mm,
if you have a sense of pride in the program and what you're doing, like that's gonna also like kind of like what you're saying, like the athletes are gonna feed off of that. If you come into it's the same thing. Like if you come into the room not confident, how are you gonna expect your athletes to be confident? So I think that's a huge thing too, where it's like making sure how you carry yourself, whether having pride, being confident, having good work ethic, and all these things, like, and the athletes see that at the end of the day, like, you're an example to these kids too. um I think I went off tangent there, but anyways.
I
Yeah.
love tangents. Every coach is always self-conscious about it, but I'm like this isn't a strict podcast where like there's set questions. If we go off on tangents, we'll just keep
Yeah,
going. Like I'm good. It's
but
worked
yeah, I
this
think
far.
that's what's
So
important for me. So just making
um
sure you're a good example to your athletes.
yeah,
So
I always love the coaches that also work out in front of their athletes. And I've seen your Instagram and you do that often as well.
yeah.
And it shows them that like although you're the coach, but you're still actively pursuing that stimulus and that hard aspect of lifting where you're still pushing your body, you're still pushing the way that they are most of the times too.
Yeah, it's showing them that I'm also in the trenches with them. I'm not just telling them to do this just because, like, you know, um, and they'll ask you good questions too, and making sure that you have a why as to, okay, why are we doing this movement. So yeah, you can't just give them a certain
Yeah,
exercise to do. They're smart kids now, especially with them having
100%.
access to social media and TikTok and all the works. They're intelligent. So
100%. Like the biggest thing for me as well is like I like to show my kids that I work out because like I know when it starts sucking. Like if we're doing conditioning drills and it's like Tabata style or like 10 on 10 off, like
mhm,
I know exactly when it starts sucking so that we can get through it together.
mhm, mhm. That's
In
a
terms
huge
of your pro
component from a mental aspect too.
Yeah,
You know.
100%. Like leadership as well. Like it just hits so many things when you can show them that you're active as well.
Yeah.
In terms of your programming, like what's the biggest considerations that you have for your team just now, and like what's some of the main principles that you use?
Yeah. So right now, we're training 4 times a week, so it's an 8-hour week. And then obviously when we get into official practice, September 23rd, which is around the corner, 3 weeks, um, then we'll get into our 20-hour week. So basically, whenever they're practicing, they'll be in the weight room.
Hmm.
And I think it's great from a culture standpoint because they understand, like, we're putting the work in the weight room and also on the court. And there's just kind of like this balance of you know um, everything is earned.
Mm.
So whether it's on the court or on the weight room, you're putting in the time and the work, whether it's mobility, active recovery, strength training, speed work. Um, the weight room is part of our culture. So right now we go 4 times a week, and I guess you can I kind of break it up into like one day is quote unquote linear day, another day is quote unquote lateral day, emphasis. Another day is kind of like my movement day, so like gymnastics kind of day, whether it's crawling on the ground or moving like a kid, I guess you could say. And then our last day is more of like our conditioning and rotation, shoulder and hip dissociation. So just making sure that we're kind of like hitting all of our boxes. Um, and then obviously from there, it's okay. What does this kid need? What's her previous history of injury? Does she need more, knee bending because she doesn't want a knee bend because of her previous ACL injury? So she's more of like a hinger. But we're trying to get away from that, right? Because at least from what I've seen, like then they'll complain about low back pain and things like that. But yeah, so I guess kind of going off of that, like we use Sparta Force Plate, and it kind of buckets them into kind of like this load and explode drive group. So I have like my load and explode group, my drive group, and bucket them there. And then we also, what I've also done, and I've seen great improvements in this, is we've seen their, obviously we could see their jump shift. So if they're shifting anything above 10, we'll normally start off our warm up with just working on that non-dominant side with a lot of volume, a lot of reps, and we've seen a lot of improvements on that, honestly. So
What's
that's
the
been
reasoning
cool.
behind that?
I'm sorry.
What's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, just like that concept of like, okay, think of it like baseball, right? If you're a pitcher and you're constantly throwing with that same arm, at some point, you know, um, you need to work on that other side, right? Just from a health standpoint. So we're trying to go back and forth between like health versus performance, right? And obviously there's a time and place. So like if it's in season, then I'm gonna kind of gear more towards that health side. So like let's say if my kid on the basketball court favors spinning on one side, pushing off of that left leg for that spin move, I'm gonna have to now counteract that and work on the right side. I hope that makes sense. But
Yeah, that's
it's just basically like we're trying to balance everything, right?
yeah.
Um, Obviously, we can argue the fact that like why would you want to balance that if that's kind of what's making them on the court. But I think it just kind of goes back to like health versus performance and just keeping that in mind, because also too much of anything isn't good.
Hmm.
So yeah, honestly, from a training standpoint, I can go in so many different directions because there is so many ways of doing it. I've had, honestly, I don't think I've had one freshman come in like with no previous injury. They've been cut up some way, shape, or form, whether it's been knee, ankle, foot. Um, I think I even had a hip too at one
Ah,
point. But anyway, so it's you're getting more into almost like rehab training and
yeah.
moving well than actually like training if you were healthy.
Hmm.
So you're trying to get them more into that healthy standpoint. Can they move well? Do they have full range of motion in certain areas, certain degrees? And then, okay, now we can kind of get into like the meat and potato and I like it. To me, it's fun, like the speed training and all that, which we still do, of course, because you still need to train for your sport.
Hmm.
But it's again just balancing what's more important than the other.
I agree. The reason I asked you to explain is because I don't think there's a big push for always keeping your athletes as balanced as possible. Like, and what I mean by like balance as well is like if I have, like you mentioned, like a pitcher, and they're
Hmm.
constantly they're throwing, and that's this movement, like going forward. I want to balance them to the point where I'm going to get them to struggle backwards as well, so that
Hmm.
exterior
Exactly.
rotational
Yep.
stance. So like for me, it's like if you're this strong at pushing off with your right foot, let's get at least somewhere close with your left foot. Because
Yeah.
like athletes are great cheats. Like
Yep.
the best athletes will cheat at something. during their
Yeah,
movement.
yeah, they're the
Whether
best
it's
compensators for sure.
to be more efficient, sure, but I also want you to be as equally strong on the other side, because then if there's this discrepancy between both sides, there's a higher risk for injury,
Yeah,
and
and
that's
also too, like as much as we want to like peak their performance ASAP, we also have to think
mm,
longevity. You know, so like a lot of my kids, some of them say, you know, I want to go play pro, but then I'm having them train a certain way. Then I'm not thinking about their career long term wise. You know,
mm,
and I think that also plays a huge role in how I program. Is just making sure that they also will have longevity after leaving MSU.
100%.
So
Like my business is called Primitive Athletics for that same reason. Like for me, the primal movements, so like you're crawling, you're getting up, like arching and sort
yeah,
of your neck, like rolling. And I've
mhm.
seen a couple of videos of your athletes just doing like roly polies across the mat.
Yeah,
Like it's so simple, and people really get away from these silly movements because like society has that thing where, oh, you're an adult. How many adults on a day to day do you see jumping? Probably close to zero,
yeah,
right? Like, and I always tell this story. Like, I go to my mom and dad sometimes, and I'm just like, I get them to jump, just like, and I challenge my dad. I'm like, you can't jump farther than me. So like, there's that competitive, like you should be jumping throughout your whole life, because it
Mhm,
gives you that awakeness, that sharpness, that you can still do things as well. So like for me, the primal movements is really what can give you that longevity as well.
mhm,
Like explosive power is great, strength is great, it'll help you along your ways too, but like you still need to like get out of bed in the morning. Like you
mhm.
still need to roll, you still need to like roll to get out of bed. Like so for me, movement is movement, and that's really the king.
Yeah, and going back to like the whole rolling stuff that we do, like I think that plays a huge role in body awareness. You know, um, like I'll have like the kids will spin, or well not spin, but they'll roll, and they'll like say, "Oh, I'm dizzy." And I'm like, "Okay, well, no, these are things that the reason why we are doing them, right? Vestibular system and all of that. And so that let's say you are doing a spin move in the paint, or you can get to that point because you feel comfortable enough to do it, that you are still aware of what's going on around you. Um, and it's funny to see how how they have improved in certain areas in that. They roll a little bit better. They actually feel more comfortable landing and falling, which like you're gonna have to do in basketball. You're gonna fall. You're gonna try to take a charge. You're gonna fall. You have to learn how to fall, embrace that impact, and then get back up. Um, I mean, basketball is a very physical contact sport. You know, I'm not saying it's football, but it's very close.
Mhm.
you know, um, so all those like gymnastics and things like that are crucial in my program for sure. Even if it's just like to warm us up, a little something,
100%.
a little doses here and there. You know.
But like that's what great programs is. Like it's not being strict into one method or one principle. Like you
Yeah.
explore multiple sort of assets to really build out your programs. I always mention that my programs aren't really my programs. They're programs that I've seen and I've learned from, and I've taken the best parts for me and
Mhm.
just adapted everyone's opinions into one cohesive thing that I do with my athletes.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And we all know like everything's shared. You know. So
100%. I hate coaches that are like, "Oh, this brand new thing that I've invented," and it's like, yeah, no, you've not. Like I've seen that thousands of
yeah.
times.
Yeah.
You've copied and pasted it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the biggest thing is when you are taking, you know, so and so's work, Ron's work, let's say Hoodie's work, Glenn's work, and you're putting it all together. Is just making sure that again you understand the why, and you're not
Hmm.
just copy and pasting it. And then also understanding like the way that they were probably doing things was different for their population, you know, and it may not work for your current population. And I think sometimes some coaches get lost in that, where it's like, oh well, so and so did it, they're successful, so it should be successful with my athletes, and that's not always the case. So just making sure that you're obviously constantly checking on your work and being honest with why and how you're doing things. Um,
I
yeah.
agree. I agree thoroughly.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of like your schedule, how is it split between basketball and golf?
Yeah, so until we get our own weight room, um, I'll have golf in the weight room a little bit more. But right now, I only see them twice a week. Um, and then once we get into in season with basketball, if I'm traveling, um, I normally will only see them one time a week. And that's kind of been hard because like my first year with golf, I was able to see them like 2 to 3 times a week. And then my second year, just based off of scheduling and the demands of basketball, and for me at Missouri State, like it is a priority. Um, Basketball, they do come first. I mean, I was hired by the basketball head coach, um, so in my second year, I only saw golf in season like probably a handful of times. It was really tough because we were just traveling. Um, and then so hopefully this year it's a little bit different where I'll see them a little bit more often. But um, with basketball right now, we're training in the evenings, and then with golf, I'll train with them at 6 in the morning.
Mm.
So 6 a.m. with golf, and then in the evenings with basketball, and then kind of in between that day is um, I'm either ordering food because I'm also in charge of their nutrition and the food that they have in their lounge area. So either ordering food, obviously having meetings, collecting, analyzing, and looking at data. Um, I am currently now meeting, or I have been the last 2 years, been meeting with two of our professors on campus. Um, Hopefully, it comes to fruition, and we are able to write a research paper from our data that we've collected the last 2 years. So we're in the middle and in the process of doing that, um, which I'm really stoked about. So hopefully, again, it comes into fruition. But that'll obviously take time, and then finding any ways where I can continue to grow and learn, like getting on your podcast and um, speaking, because I get nervous with that. But and then obviously other ways that I can just continue to sharpen my skills as a coach, whether it's taking Danny Foley's courses, his Fashion Chronicles, which I just currently finished. So yeah, always trying to learn and trying to stay busy. Obviously, training obviously is a huge part of my day as
Yeah.
well. I have to get it
You're
in.
having you're having to wear multiple hats throughout your day essentially.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%, 100%. Yep. Some
Is there
days a
any
psychologist, counselor with athletes, but
See,
all the
I always
hats.
say that that's all strength coaches, whether we
Yeah,
care to admit it or not. We're psychologists to a certain degree. Like sometimes our kids come in with like the shittiest of attitudes, and we're still having to make them perform.
yeah,
So we're just
yeah.
like, I'll give you a hug and a kiss, and you could fucking go.
And let's
Uh,
fucking go. Yep.
Thomas Newman said it the best. I think he's like, I think it was something like, um, it was I forget, but it was like something like 3 sets of hugs, 5 sets of whatever it was. But it was like we also need to know that they're humans, and
Yeah,
we don't have science projects in our weight
yeah,
room. We have
yeah,
real humans with real emotions.
yeah.
So like being that hard ass won't always bode well if you've
I,
got athletes who are feeling some type of way about something in their life.
I will say that was definitely a transition for me because I grew up where, well, first, my dad was a football coach at a high school, and so he also was a strength coach. Um, and I grew up where, even with other strength trainers that I had, where it was like, you don't ask questions, you just do what you're told, and you always get after it. Um, and so it was hard for me where, like, yeah, now obviously we're training smarter, right? We're not just, you should be able to run 5 miles and then push this sled and pull that sled. Like, it's a little bit smarter now. But that's kind of how I got into strength and conditioning, where it's like, I did all this. You guys should be able to do this, you
Mm,
know? Um, and then it's like, well, why are you questioning me? You should just, like, you shouldn't have to question me. So that transition was very interesting. Um, or now it's like, okay, now we're training smarter. We're not just, running them into the ground just cuz, and I also have a coach that again understands that piece, because there's still,
Mhm.
basketball coaches that are stuck in those old ways of training, right? So again, lucky to work with a coach that understands that. And then two, like, um I lost my train of thought, but yeah, just making sure that I was able to adapt into now where it's like I can be understanding. Okay, you academically you're very high stressed and you're having, 3 tests coming up. All right, let's just actively move today. Maybe push a little weight, and then I'll see you tomorrow and let's get after it. You know, so just kind of have that dialogue and that relationship with the athletes for sure is a huge piece. And it's definitely changed because, like I said, like I grew up where it was just like go,
Mhm.
go, 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 go. There was no such thing as a high day and a low day. Um,
It was just
every
highs.
day, every day was a high day. So just making sure that um, obviously now I understand that, and a huge piece of that as to why I understand that is because of our data, our catapult data, and all
Mhm.
of that. And I've seen it. I've seen it. So yeah, and then I guess kind of going back to like using that data and training and how I organize my program is just making sure that like you have a system, because you can have all
Mhm.
these exercises, you can have all these conditioning, but if you don't know how to put it together and make it like a perfect puzzle piece, it's not gonna matter. The adaptations aren't gonna happen the way that you want it to be or how it should be. So I think I can't remember how he explained it, but it was Stu McMillan, the way he discussed system and all of that, it was phenomenal. And I totally resonate with that, and it makes total sense. Like, if you don't understand how to put plyos together with certain exercises in the weight room and things like that, like, at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. And plus, it's not
100%.
going to matter if, at the end, like, again, like, the athletes came to play basketball too, right? So they don't care what you do in the weight room. So if you don't listen to them and you aren't able to have a relationship with them and build that relationship and that trust with them, the intent behind anything that they do is not going to be there. So that's first and foremost too. Like, you have to have buy-in. If not, what you do in the weight room does not matter. The system and
100%.
everything that you put time and effort into is not going to matter. So
Like some hard hitting realities that I've had to come out like face is understanding that although we see our kids like sometimes more than the coach does, like that doesn't mean that we're the most important piece of their athletic career. Like they got to where they are because of their abilities to be like to play the sport.
mhm.
They're we're
Yep,
just like a piece that helps them like we've mentioned have longevity
yep,
within that sport.
yep,
So like it's also knowing that although we're really important and like we can help them stay in the sport for longer, we're not always going to be able to like get everyone in line for this whole program. Like some kids just don't like strength training.
yeah,
Like what do you do then? Like
yeah,
I know personally that there's a some very high like elite level athletes that play nationally for their country, and they couldn't give a flying fuck about SNC,
yep,
and neither does their coach. So and they're playing at the highest level.
yep,
So like do we sometimes matter that much? It's also knowing that too.
yeah, for sure. It's yeah. We can go down that rabbit hole for sure, but yeah, I think the biggest piece is just making sure that they trust you
Hmm.
and they know that you have their best
The best
interests.
intentions.
Yeah, and so once they understand that and they know that, um, I mean, then you're able to train them.
Mhm.
You know, so
100%.
yeah,
How much different does the basketball program differ from the golf program for Missouri?
it's very different.
Okay, let's
um,
get into it.
It is very different because again, like, I only see golf twice a week. All right, so it's hard. It gets a little bit. It's not that it's hard. It's just a little bit more difficult trying to gauge. how are they doing, how are they feeling, and having that, again, like I talked about, relationship. Whereas like the basketball athletes, I see them every single day, so I know what their day to day looks like. Whereas golf, it's a little difficult because again, I only see them twice a week. But with golf, as far as like training goes, I mean, I have kids that have like never touched a weight, never touched
Mm.
a weight. So it's just making sure that we're building that base, and doing very simple things. I need them to be. It's funny because I had this conversation the other day with our interns, and it's the question. I can't remember how I asked the question, but it was something along the lines of like, what's most important first, right? Is it robustness and stiffness around the torso, or is it rotation, right? And obviously, I want my golfers to rotate because that's their
The whole
sport.
sport.
But I think for me, I would want them to first be strong, rigid, stiff, because they're getting this motion. I mean, they're
Anyways.
golfing like hours, hours, hours. Um, Constantly, they're in tons of tournaments. Even over the summer, they're in tons of tournaments that they're involved in. So they're golfing again, going back to health versus performance. You know,
Hmm.
so I want them to be. I almost like train them only like in a sagittal plane. Um, is that wrong? I don't know. Is it right? I don't know. But as of right now, I'm finding where there is a little bit benefit to that because okay, now their posture is better, shoulders are back, they're robust. Now they're able to create the stiffness, and now they're able to even transfer that energy where they want it when they swing that golf club. Whereas if they weren't as strong and robust, now that energy is being leaked elsewhere, right? So, anyways, we had that kind of discussion in the office with the interns, and it was interesting as far as like, okay, what comes first? You know, it's kind of like the chicken or
Hmm.
the egg. And so, yeah, as of right now, and as of right now, I'm only training them one time a week because we lift Mondays and Thursdays, and so like tomorrow's Labor Day, so they're off, and then next Monday they're in a tournament. So to me, okay, what's most important? I don't need to do all these med ball rotation stuff or any rotation stuff. Let me get them a little bit more strong. Let's do goblet squat or iso split squat or anyways, things like that. So it is very different from basketball
Hmm.
because again, like right now, I'm only seeing them one time a week. And then as far as basketball goes, because I do see them so often, we're just able to hit so many different things throughout the week of what's important on that certain day. And because I can also sometimes watch practice, I kind of get a feel of like where they're at, whether
Hmm.
if it was a hard day or not. So then I kind of know what I need to do in the weight room. But yeah, as far as basketball goes, like obviously plyometrics, jumping, whether it's weighted or non-weighted, teaching them how to land, whether it's double or single-legged, um, getting them strong in all different shapes and angles, and um, you know, again, we sometimes train without their shoes on,
Hmm.
um, so that they are able to have a better foot. They're able to control their foot better, whether it's pronation, supination, um, using the ramps or the I call them the ramps, but the wedges.
Different elevations, yeah.
Yeah, the wedges for different. We'll use it for split squats. We'll use it for jumping. Just again, just if we can get that foot and ankle, calf complex strong, hopefully up the chain is a little bit better. You know, because again, like you see it all the people say, you know, knee valgus isn't good. But you see it all the time in Steph Curry when he shoots or anyone who's shooting, there's some form of knee valgus, right? So if that's how they organize and that's how they're trying to, I guess you can say,
That's their
um,
movement patterns, yeah.
yeah, it's just their movement pattern, how they're organizing to try to meet a certain demand. Um, then we need to then teach them when I say we do single leg squats, right? I'll emphasize let your knee go over your big toe. But while you do that, you need to be able to control the foot, right? So For me, the foot in basketball is a huge component in how we do everything. Whether it's floating heel, different concepts with squatting or split squatting, trap bar deadlift. The foot for me is huge because again, it's the first thing that's hitting the ground, and if it's not strong, stable, and mobile enough, then things up the chain,
Hmm.
some things can happen
It's
up
the
the chain that we
it's the
don't want to
first
discuss.
contact
But yeah,
point.
huh?
It's the first contact point on any movement that you do.
Yeah, exactly. So, and now that's not to say, oh, golf doesn't work on their foot and stuff like that. They do. It's just not as, I guess, as of importance, right?
Hmm.
But still, like golfers, you still need to be able to learn how to shift from one side to the next on that foot. But anyways,
No, you touched on a really good point, and it's like that bringing sport specifics into the weight room as well. Like if
mhm,
that's not, if you're seeing them enough, sure, put some more intent behind their rotational work,
yeah,
but not you can never mimic sports in the weight room.
yeah,
That's just something that you can't do. And I used, like when I started, when I was a dumbass, um like I was trying to do sport specific stuff with my athletes, but it just doesn't fucking work. I get,
yeah,
if you want them to run faster, get them to run
yeah,
faster.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
easy as
Do the
that.
thing. Do
Yeah.
the thing. Yeah.
What's your PR song?
My what?
PR song.
My PR song. Oh goodness, I can't even remember the last time I PR'd, but oh god, that's a funny question. I'm gonna have to say Rod Wave. I love Rod Wave and any of his music.
Okay.
So any
Never
one
heard
of
of
those.
Rodman.
Rod Wave, yep.
I'll write that down. Do you have a conditioning playlist?
A conditioning playlist. My thoughts and words me cursing. Um, I would say so. When I ran the marathon, I listened to Nicki Minaj a
Okay.
lot. It was I can't remember what album it was, but it was like her latest one, and yeah, that was what I ran to.
Nice.
Was Nicki Minaj's album?
That's different. That's
Yeah,
different. What's one piece of advice that you would give new strength coaches or coaches wanting to come into this industry?
yeah. Like I tell my intern all the time is just making sure that, well, first understand how you think about training, and once you understand how you like to train athletes or what your beliefs are with training athletes, what your philosophy is with that, then seek out similar like-minded
Mm,
mentors. Like for me, right, like I knew everything that Andrea Hoodie posted, I loved. And I was like, I want to learn from her. Um, Anyways, called her like 3 times before I actually was able to have the opportunity to interview for her to get the internship position. Um, and luckily I was able to. But again, like being active and seeking out those mentors, learn from them. One, because they have a lot of experience. And then two, they're going to be able to, again, guide you and direct you with maybe what your goals and aspirations are in this field. So for me, is making sure like you seek out that right mentor, because it'll make a huge difference moving on in your career. Because if you don't find that right mentor, because again, like this field is huge on networking and connections, and um, and making sure though too that like you're not just, oh, I want to connect and network with this person to use them to get me to X, Y,
mhm.
and Z, you know. So making sure your intentions are right. But yeah, just making sure the huge thing for me is like, again, I talk about all the time, like I'm just lucky and blessed to have the mentors that I have and that I'm still able to speed dial and call them right now. um, and so that's kind of, I guess, the advice is making sure you figure out what are your what's your training philosophy, and then seek out that mentor.
Nice. When's the next courtside competition happening?
Well, I don't know. I'll keep you updated. Hopefully sooner rather than later, but it'll definitely, we'll definitely be doing that again for sure.
Perfect. I appreciate you so much for coming on today and
Yeah, no,
sharing some of your principles and sort of the way that you organize your programs as well.
for sure. It was awesome. Thank you for having me, Manny.
If you want to give people way to contact you, or where they can follow you as well?
Yeah. Honestly, my only go-to social media platform is Instagram. It's Coach Jimenez 12. And then, I mean, if you want to email me, I also respond to emails as well. It's nj7e at missouri-state.edu. But yeah, I'm always open to having these shop talks, and yeah, I love conversing and collaborating with individuals. So
No, perfect. Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you, Manny.